Please share with the audience where you come from, where you're located.
Yes, I am in the United States, in California.
Mhm. And I have a question before I introduce you. In how many languages do you provide conscious parenting? Is it
Two, in English and Spanish.
okay? Thank you so much. So you can find Karemi in English and Spanish. She is a conscious parenting coach. She is trauma informed and she has a master's in public health. And from what I learned about you, there is so much to talk with you about. But first of all, my first question is, how did you come to conscious parenting, and when did your awakening started? And I know it's not one moment, but please share with us how your journey began.
Sure. Yes, when I was in my early 20s, I realized through the relationship I had with my then boyfriend that I had so much unresolved trauma. That's when it comes out, right? That's when we know, is in relationships, when we find out all the unresolved wounds and unhealed, just baggage, if you want to call it that way, but just, experiences that we haven't healed. And so I went to therapy. That's where I started, was in therapy at the age of 22, and gradually began to see the many ways in which my upbringing influenced my way of thinking, my way of seeing myself, my way of seeing the world, my fears, uh, my belief systems, everything. And it was a very gradual process. But it was when I became a mom. That's when I saw it even more. I will admit that before I had my son, when I was pregnant, I thought, I've done so much therapy. I'm good. I'm going to be really good as a mom. And it's great to be optimistic, but oh, how wrong I was. I had so much more inner work to do. And so it was through the academic and professional training that I've received and the therapy I've continued to have that I have really been able to just do much more depth in my healing. And it's thanks to my being a mother now, to seeing, the importance of it as a mother.
Thank you so much for sharing this, because I'm a true fan of relationships, and it's really, our relationships are our biggest awakening moments, because in those relationships with the other, we see another side of us that we are not so aware of it. And the child, it's the biggest mirror. So thank you for sharing this. And also, I think it's very important to understand for people that sometimes it's not enough to do the work alone. We need to have a coach right next to us. We need to have this other perspective of another human being. And I think this is very valuable.
Yes, yes. Having someone who has an objective and just professional training to be able to help, to be a mirror to where you can grow, is incredibly helpful. And not that we're going to need it all the time, but in stages of life in which we may be going through something very challenging, very difficult, perhaps where we don't just quite, we know there's somewhere to grow, but not quite how. That's where it's so therapeutic, so helpful, and it's been really transformative for me to be able to do that inner work, in a therapeutic way, which is what in part inspired me to become a coach. When I got my master's in public health, and it included a lot of academic and professional training in the behavioral and the societal influences on mental health status, it was great. But to have had the additional academic training in trauma informed care, in parenting specifically, and how all of our all of our childhood experiences might show up in different ways, has really been helpful. And I will say that even though it's not easy to go through difficult experiences in childhood, it really helps to have empathy for another human being's struggle when I know that I've gone through my own struggle, and what it can look like as a woman, as a mother, just as an individual. So anyway, yes, there's a lot of power to that inner work.
Yeah, I completely would agree with you because this is an experience that we have and we can use it as a therapist. Yeah, it's very important. There is one quote that I love from you, and it is one of the main messages I work to transmit is that the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves. And I
Yes.
love this. Can you just briefly explain? And it's actually it forms all our relationships and especially the one with our children. But go a little bit deeper on that one because I totally agree with this one, and I think it's very important for people to hear about it.
Yes, yes, thank you. You know, I think as human beings or as parents, we always have the best intentions, right? We want to have a great relationship either with our children or with our significant other, with our friends, just in life. And intentions are great, but we will not be able to have those healthy, growth oriented relationships with others if we don't have it first with ourselves. And what do I, maybe that sounds a little weird. Like, what do you mean relationship with me? It's just me. Well, we have learned through experience and just through, you know, developmental psychology and just all this work that's been done, that the way we see ourselves, the belief systems we have about who we are, where our worth comes from, if we're even good enough or not, and how love is, you know, do I need to work for love? And if so, how? And do I need to please or do I need to control? All those things are messages we have in here. And it is reflective of how we see ourselves. And we can't help but to project that into our relationships. We will inevitably put that out in our actions, in our words, in our conversations. So it'll affect all aspects of our lives. So it's very important to think to ourselves, what do I think about where my worth comes from? What do I think about whether I'm good enough as I am, or if I need to work for acceptance, work for someone else's love? All the ways in which we see ourselves, our fears, we will transmit them in our relationships. And it's not to be scared, like, oh my God, no, it's more like, okay, what a nice opportunity to explore all the areas in which I can grow. And I'm sure that whoever's listening is going to be like, yes, I have seen that come out in my with my children, in my conversations, in the instructions I give, or the way I tell my kids to do things, or in my the types of arguments I have with my partner. They are always kind of around the same themes, and that's something that I see in myself. It's just to say, if we want to transform the quality of the relationships we have, let's look within. And let's look at how I view myself and how I'm taking care of myself, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, and I think the more we work on ourselves, the better this relationship becomes and and more clear this message becomes. Because for me, even in my personal life, like 15 years ago, I couldn't understand that message. How can I love myself before somebody else loves me? But the more we do the work, the more clear it is. And I want to ask you, because you're talking about this relationship with yourself, what give us something practical that you do today that helps you like in your everyday life? How do you connect to yourself? How do you take care of you when you're frustrated, triggered? Because people believe when we become conscious, we stop being anxious, but it happens in
Mm-hmm.
life. So
Yes.
how do you reconnect? How do you help yourself?
Yes. Thank you. If I can in the moment and put a pause on what I'm doing, I go for a walk. That really helps me. It just to get 10 minutes of sunlight and to see some trees next to on the sidewalk, you know, it really helps to ground me. And then it, you know, back home and speak with my son and say, okay, let's talk about what happened. When I feel that I'm about to, you know, maybe say something I'm going to regret, okay, I need to go for a walk. Now, if that's not possible, I try, even though I don't do it every day, I'm going to be honest, I try to get a good night's sleep, because if I don't get the rest I need, I know how I can be more reactive. It's just how my body responds. Some people feel much more tired. I tend to get very like moody if I don't get the rest I need. So I try to do those two things: get a good night's sleep and walk right when I'm feeling triggered. I also try to, even if it's 10 minutes, just try to meditate every day. And it doesn't have to be intense. It's just, focusing on my breath. It helps to remind myself that the thoughts are just the thoughts and they're not who I am. They're just, oh, there we go, another thought. No need to get stuck with it, just go. And then in real life, when we're in a conversation with someone having a hard time, or with our children, we can remind ourselves that the first thought that comes to mind about them, oh, they're so challenging, we can just, oh, go back to what we did in the morning. Oh, okay, it's a thought. I can address this present moment. What is needed of me in this present moment? Now, what is my mind saying about XYZ? Just what do I need? So it's that sort of practice that helps, I think, to address the tough moments little by little, every day.
Yeah, I found your examples very helpful as well. Walking for me is huge, but yeah, but everyone needs also to find their own ways to reconnect because we are all different. And for somebody it will be a workout, for somebody it will be walk, but we just need to find ourselves.
Yes,
And
yes.
and I want to go very briefly to your topic for the summit. I don't want
Hmm.
to go deep in there because I cannot wait for your topic because it's one of my favorite topics. But it's a secure attachment is one of the most important gifts we can give our children. And You'll be talking on the summit about the attachment, but why this topic is so important? Can we just briefly explain the parents what is so important about this attachment?
Yes. So, I'll just briefly share that the word attachment in society is used in different ways. Sometimes we say, oh, don't attach to material possessions, which is, of course, a very good suggestion. But when we speak about attachment in psychology, we're not referring to that kind of attachment, to not get like stuck on possessions. Attachment in psychology is basically describing the quality of the relationship we have with our children or with partners. But in this case, for parenting, attachment refers to the way in which a child, a baby, learns to connect with us, to feel connected to us. That's it. And found through many decades of research across the world, interestingly, that regardless of our culture, our ethnic group, our socioeconomic status, our gender, or our age, attachment is the biggest determinant of a human being's mental and emotional health. So the quality of the relationship that we have with our children will be the most impactful legacy we will leave them for their future mental and emotional health, for the quality of relationships they will have in the future. Because, of course, the way we see ourselves is what in part determines the type of partners we'll attract into our lives. This has been shown across the board, and I can dive more deeply, of course, into this in the presentation. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because yes, there are many ways to be a great parent. That's the great news. There are so many great ways to be a good parent. Not perfect, because that doesn't exist, and we shouldn't strive for perfection. It's not possible, nor do our children need it. But there are key things. Even though there are many ways to be a great parent, there are a few key areas that as parents we can focus on to make sure we're giving our children what they need at a mental and emotional level. And that's why attachment is so important for parents to know about. Just like children need to learn their ABCs and their basic mathematical, skills, as parents, we need to know about attachment. We need to understand what it is, because it is the foundation for everything else that will come. There is, this has been shown, I'll just say briefly, in the Harvard University Center on the Developing Child. This has been found. There's a great author that I highly recommend, Dr. Daniel Siegel, who has written, he's a neuropsychiatrist, world renowned, and he's written many books on parenting. And he himself, in a conference I went to that he gave, he said, I've written many books, yes, on parenting, but my first one was on attachment, because I would not have been true to the science if I hadn't written first a book about attachment. because it is the most foundational work for parents before anything else. So anyway, that's just kind of like my brief answer as to why I feel parents can greatly benefit from learning about it. And I'll be sharing in my presentation not just what it is, but the different types of attachment. Well, technically in psychology they're called strategies, but we'll call them types of attachment, and how we can foster a secure attachment with our children, and what kinds of behaviors, typical habitual behaviors, would get us to form the unhealthy types of attachment. So I'll talk about all of that in the presentation.
Yeah, I find this 100% so important because in my work, when I work with clients, I see depending on their attachment style and depending on their trust in the other human being, even in therapy, the progress is completely different if they have good attachment style in advance or if we need to rebuild and to go back and to do the work. So it's really, really something very crucial. So I think your topic will be very, very important for people to watch.
I'm
And
looking.
not only for parents, it's for everyone, actually.
Yes.
Karemi, it's so lovely talking to you, but because we need to close soon, I have one final question for you. Before the summit today, now, what is the one thing that comes to your mind? Like, what is your most important message today that you have for parents? What do you want them to learn today from you? You said so much, but I'm sure you have something in mind for today.
Even of a message for parents, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just say, that we are all to not strive for perfection. And I'll say this because I've worked with many clients who worry about not doing well enough by their kids, and I have had those fears too. And I would just share, growing as a human being is an and it's just a life journey. It's part of life. And whatever you see in yourself that you might say, you know what, I still need to work on this. I can't believe I'm still, making, behaving in this way. We can be so critical sometimes of ourselves. But I will just invite viewers to ask themselves, whose voice is that? Is that really mine, or was it learned? Because none of us are born being self-critical. None of us are born talking to ourselves in a derogatory, shameful way when we make mistakes. That's learned. And whether we learned it in the home or perhaps in school through a teacher or an older sibling or in society, to remind ourselves, you know what? I'm doing the best I can, and I'm getting, either the knowledge or doing the work or gaining the skills to just show up in the healthiest way for myself, for my children, for my relationships, to just acknowledge that about ourselves, because inner work is a lifelong journey. And that's not to be like, oh my goodness, really lifelong. It's more like, oh, it's just part of life. There's no specific end to get to with this work of conscious parenting or of growing within. It's just part of our lives. And every day is an invitation to see a new area where we can grow. And that's a great thing. So don't seek perfection. It's not necessary. Our kids don't need us to be perfect at all, and it's impossible. And whenever we feel self-critical, to just remind ourselves, that's not me. That's something I learned. That's something I absorbed.
I love it because when we seek perfection, we always come from a place of lack and also fear. And when we stop criticizing us, actually, we give us a chance to come from love and curiosity and more playfulness. And this is so much more easier to connect and to do a much better job as a parent. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for this beautiful advice. I
Thank you.
cannot I cannot wait to see you on the summit, Karemi. It's been honest pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I look forward to participating.
Thank you. Bye everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.